Now leaving Bellingham Green is the 7:10 a.m. from Catford to Tehran. On board are 35 members of the University Scout and Guide Club setting out on a goodwill visit to Iranian scouting. We caught the midday ferry from Dover to Boulogne on Sunday 25th of August. The journey took us across the Channel through France, Belgium, Holland, Germany. Our coach was a 1952 Leyland, on hire with a driver from Penn Tours, and we had painted it in university colours. Just outside Ostend, a carnival procession proved to be the first of many hold-ups. Our hosts for the first night were the Dutch Red Cross at their Maastricht headquarters, where a Dutch Sea Ranger, Marijke, joined the expedition. After crossing Germany by Autobahn, we passed on into Austria. A taste of things to come. In a week's time, this S-bend was to look as straight as the M1 to us. We had the luxury of chalets for our night in the Belgrade State campsite. The next morning, Pete Jackson, on our behalf, said goodbye to Mike and Norman from Penn Tours, who had accompanied us by Land Rover as far as Belgrade. Travelling deeper into Yugoslavia, we left tarmac roads behind us, and were not to see them again, apart from a few short stretches for the rest of the trip. A convention of steamrollers engaged in roadworks didn't help matters, and we often had to take to the mountainside to get round them. We were delayed by this and so had to make camp after dark in Bulgaria. We camped a few feet from on towards the Turkish border, where we saw our first Iranian coach on its way to Cologne. Still behind schedule, we made camp at 2 a.m. on the beach of the Marmara Sea. In the morning, out of bed and in for a swim. Those of us were up early enough, that was. Saturday was spent in Istanbul, out gear and sightseeing. For the second half of our journey, we were to leave Istanbul, continue across Turkey, and eventually into Iran, stopping at Manzuriya, 15 miles from Tehran. Crossing the Bosphorus by ferry, we left Europe in darkness and caught our first glimpse of Asia as dawn broke. Spent a particularly gay lunchtime in a Turkish village where the inhabitants initiated us into the rites of Turkish dancing. We retaliated. We then headed out across the mountains towards the Black Sea coast. A lorry up to its axles in muddy road delayed us yet again, and we took the opportunity of having a swim in the Black Sea. Next stop, Russia. You'll be riding 6 by 4 this 20 pounds. You'll be riding 6 by 4
she comes. She'll be riding six black horses, riding six white horses, riding six white horses.
Eventually the lorry was towed away and we pressed on with the coach across the temporary bridge and finally fought our way through to the end of the roadworks. Ah, back onto good roads again, thank goodness. We spent 2 days travelling through the mountains, across 8,000-foot mountain passes, and one day we went round 2,000 U-bends. We didn't always get round, of course. And at last we arrived at the Turkey-Irani border. And after customs formalities passed on into Iran. We were met at the border by a scouter from Maku, a small village just inside Iran, who led us in his jeep to the school where we were to spend the night. We were all a lot more cheerful now as we met our first scout for a week, and from now on things were much more organised. Some small Persian boys here trying to nick one of our mattresses. Beds at last, the first for a week. When we arrived at the small village of Miani, we were greeted on the outskirts by some small Girl Scouts who'd been waiting 4 hours for us. They'd heard from Maku that Tony Lumley was ill, and much to his surprise, he was whisked off in an ambulance. We then all went back to a school in Miani where we had lunch and exchanged songs and gifts.
Here's my handle, here's my spout. When the kettle boiling, hear me shout. Pick me up and put it on me, toes me and
Another reception at Kazvin, and our first time sitting on Persian carpets. By now the battery of the bus had given up and we were bump starting her. Success! At last we've reached the outskirts of Tehran where we're greeted by Mr. Saeb, our host from Iranian Scouting. We arrived in the middle of the Shah's procession, much to our surprise. That was the Shah, that was. And then we drove through the city and up to the scout campsite at Mansouriya. The next day we were invited to lunch at the Royal Tehran Hilton by Dr. Nafisi, the mayor of Tehran. While in the capital we had the use of an Iranian coach, as ours badly needed servicing. At the reception we were well supplied with Canada Dry and Coca-Cola. We all had an opportunity of chatting to the mayor. After our hard week's camping, we were overwhelmed by the luxury of it all. Following the dinner, we toured the city. We will all remember Tehran traffic. We stopped to visit Tehran's only mosque. There were many examples of the beautiful mosaic and tile work for which Iran is famous. The girls weren't allowed in until they'd covered their heads. Our tour of Tehran ended with a special demonstration of the ancient Iranian sports. It was unfortunately too dark to get a clear film. Back to the morning routine at the campsite. Before and after. Smartly dressed, we set out for the day. Our first call was at the Shah's palace, where we had an audience with His Excellency, Minister of Court, Mr. Allard, who greeted us all personally, and also arranged for Tony, Pete and Viv to meet the Shah. Dr. Banai, the Chief Scout, was also there. We discovered that Mr. Allard was president of the Tehran Lions, for whom we had greetings from Southampton Lions. They sent a pennant back with us. This photograph of the Shah was presented to us by Dr. Banai and signed by the Shah himself. The Iranian Oil Company, our host for the afternoon, after another sumptuous dinner, we relaxed in and around their swimming pool. We had our own half-hour TV program that evening. We sang 3 songs, had a discussion with Iranian scouts, and showed a British guide film. Thank goodness that's all over. Our last night in Tehran was spent round the campfire. 6 a.m. the next morning found us preparing the coach for the long journey home. And later in the morning, an English minister who was living in Tehran came in and conducted communion service. Back to the old routine. Being helped here by a Persian lorry driver when the water pipe burst. Scout zone of the army at dawn. Dinner watched by buzzards. And back on the coach again, but not for long. The coach ground to a halt with first and reverse gears out of action. We sent some people into Moran, about 10 miles away, for help. But while they were gone, a petrol tanker towed the coach up to the top of the hill, and with the remaining 3 gears we were able to struggle into Moran ourselves. This is Moran, halfway from anywhere. This is Moran Town Hall, where we cooked on the balcony. This is Moran School, where we loafed, watched by patrolling policemen on the walls, where the film department practiced titles, and where we bathed in the cool blue pool. This is Moran Bakery, which baked the bread we loved so well. This is the foundry which broke the bread. And this is the bootery. An abortive camel hunt. Abortive camel hunt. At last we left Moran, thankfully it must be admitted, after 9 days' stay there, and back across the barren countryside with our last sight of Iran, the frontier post. Now back into Turkey, staying here at a school in Erzincan, where we are presented with some ironwork made by members of the school. Disaster struck. Once again we were without the use of first and reverse gears, and we camped by the barren roadside. This was the cause of all the trouble. We hitched into Erzincan, about 30 miles away, in trucks. From there we hired a Turkish bus to take us to 500 miles to Ankara. And on the way back past the campsite we picked up some more of our possessions, saying goodbye to Roger and Terry and Ray, who we left behind with the bus. Into the mountains again. This bus also broke down from 2 a.m. to 8 a.m., making it a 30-hour journey. Then from Ankara along the shores of the Bosphorus by train to Istanbul, across the Bosphorus and home by train via Greece, Yugoslavia, Austria, Germany, Belgium and across the Channel on the Ostend-Dover route. This is the Greek train on which we travel from Istanbul to Salonika. It had rather an amusing restaurant built by converting a goods caravan. Then by Yugoslavian train through Yugoslavia to Cologne, thence by Austrian train to Ostend, here travelling down the banks of the Rhine in the early morning mist. At Brussels we said goodbye to Marijke, who left us for Holland. It was a rough crossing. But at last the lights of Dover appeared. Back to British Railways again. And back to civilization, but not for long. We had to return to university. Soon the inevitable slides and pictures appeared. And films, of course. But we all agreed it had been a worthwhile and memorable expedition.